They ruled not with armies or laws, but with whispers, subtle gestures, and the invisible weight of expectation. On southern plantations, beyond the sight of visitors, the white mistresses held a power that was invisible yet absolute, a control so thorough it shaped every breath, every movement, and every decision of the enslaved people under their gaze. Their authority did not rely on whips or chains. It lived in glances, quiet commands, and the ability to reward or withhold comfort. Enslaved people learned quickly that survival depended not only on laboring in the fields or obeying the master's orders, but on anticipating the mistress's moods, reading the slightest shift in her expression, and calibrating every word and gesture to avoid disfavor. Every room of the mansion, every polished floor, every flickering candle became a stage where the mistress exercised silent dominion, and every misstep could result in punishment, humiliation, or the subtle withdrawal of necessities that could threaten life itself. She controlled access to warmth, food, and basic care, decided who could speak or move freely, and determined the fates of children, women, and men within the household. Families learned quickly that their survival depended on obedience not only to laws but to the moods of a woman whose authority was invisible but omnipresent, a power both terrifying and inescapable. Inside the house, her power was felt in every detail of domestic life. Labor assignments, clothing, meals, and even daily routines were dictated by her, with precision and unpredictability. Mistresses often used favoritism and public shame as tools, creating divisions among the enslaved, ensuring distrust and isolation that prevented unity or resistance. She was the center of emotional discipline, wielding her authority silently but effectively, shaping behavior through psychological pressure that was constant, relentless, and impossible to ignore. Her influence extended to determining which children stayed with their parents, which families were separated, and which individuals were sold or punished. Historians have discovered diaries and letters detailing meticulous records of perceived infractions, complaints, and justifications for punishment. Every written word, every observation, every complaint became a mechanism to maintain control and reinforce her social dominance. The contrast between her public persona, graceful, refined, charitable, and her private authority was stark. Beneath the lace and elegance, she directed a system of surveillance, obedience, and intimidation that left invisible but lasting scars. Her authority rivaled or sometimes surpassed that of her husband within the private spaces of the house, and her decisions dictated the emotional, social, and physical lives of those enslaved under her watch. The psychological impact of her rule was profound. Enslaved individuals endured constant hypervigilance, never knowing when they might provoke anger or displeasure. Minor mistakes could escalate into significant consequences. Silence or deference might be punished if perceived as disrespect. Favoritism created tension and suspicion among the enslaved, further enforcing isolation and emotional dependence on the mistress's judgment. The trauma of constant observation and emotional manipulation was as real as any physical punishment, leaving scars that persisted across lifetimes. Children growing up within these walls internalized fear, learning early that one misstep could imperil not only themselves but their loved ones. Adults navigated an invisible labyrinth of expectations, adjusting behavior to survive the unpredictable volatility of the mistress's moods. Every day became a test, every interaction a potential trap, and the enslaved learned that obedience was not just law, it was survival. The mistress's authority extended into the very psyche of those she controlled, shaping thoughts, behavior, and the perception of reality itself. Even after emancipation, the memory of these subtle, relentless controls endured, a testament to the invisible but absolute power she exercised. Historians uncovered these hidden histories through diaries, letters, and first-hand testimonies. Records reveal how mistresses requested punishments, ordered sales, or influenced domestic arrangements, often acting as the emotional and social center of household enforcement. Survivors' accounts describe sudden shifts in favor, whispered threats, and unpredictable punishment, creating a climate of fear so constant that it infiltrated thought and decision-making. In some cases, the house mistress's authority over punishment and social order exceeded the master's influence, demonstrating that control was not only physical but profoundly psychological. These revelations disrupt the sanitized narrative of the Southern Belle, revealing that cruelty could be quiet, methodical, and administered in the softest tones, the gentlest gestures, or through the mere withdrawal of human kindness. Her influence shaped generations, reinforcing social hierarchies, isolating families, and imprinting fear into the memories of all who lived under her gaze. The house was not simply a home. It was a crucible of psychological endurance where obedience, vigilance, and survival were constantly tested. Understanding this power illuminates the subtle mechanisms of domination within slavery, demonstrating that cruelty was not always visible, but its consequences were undeniable, pervasive, and enduring. The power of the white mistress extended beyond daily routines and domestic chores. Her influence shaped not only the labor of enslaved people but also the very architecture of fear and obedience within the household. She created invisible rules, shifting constantly according to her moods, expectations, and desires. Every glance, every word, every hesitation was measured against an ever-changing standard of behavior. Enslaved people learned to anticipate her reactions, to read subtle cues in expression and tone, and to navigate the treacherous landscape of private authority. These rules were unwritten, unrecorded, and known only through observation, trial, and survival. Breaking them could result in punishment, deprivation, or the erosion of privileges essential to life. And yet their existence was relentless, omnipresent, and inescapable. In this silent system, obedience became instinct, and fear became a constant companion. Children were taught from a young age that the mistress's approval was critical. Missteps could have consequences that rippled across families, threatening security, relationships, and even life itself. The psychological weight of this invisible authority was immense, shaping thoughts, decisions, and social interactions in ways that were almost impossible to resist. Within these walls, enslaved people were never free from scrutiny. Every smile, every movement, every conversation could be judged, corrected, or punished. Survival depended not only on physical labor, but on understanding and anticipating the mistress's intentions. An invisible game played constantly, silently, with stakes that could never be ignored. Mistresses exercised their power through subtle strategies. They orchestrated divisions among the enslaved, encouraging suspicion, mistrust, and competition, ensuring that individuals relied on their approval rather than solidarity. Favoritism created tension, isolation, and dependency, as a brief nod of acknowledgement could mean the difference between small reprieves or increased labor. Private punishments were common, administered in ways that left no visible scars yet inflicted profound emotional damage. Enslaved people often internalized blame, anxiety, and self-doubt, never knowing whether they had acted wrongly or merely misread the mistress's expectations. Diaries and letters reveal the meticulousness with which mistresses documented complaints, perceived offenses, and justifications for discipline, illustrating the calculated nature of their authority. Some historians argue that within the private domestic sphere, the house mistress exercised a level of control over enslaved lives that sometimes rivaled or exceeded the power of the master himself. Her authority reached into every corner of life, including social interactions, familial relationships, and personal dignity. In subtle ways, she maintained dominance through observation, manipulation, and expectation, shaping the very behavior, emotions, and psychology of those under her care. The impact of this silent control on enslaved people was profound and long-lasting. Adults endured constant tension, unable to relax or express themselves freely, fearing the sudden withdrawal of favor or the imposition of punishment. Children absorbed these lessons early, learning that obedience and vigilance were not optional, but a prerequisite for survival. Emotional manipulation and unpredictability created a persistent state of anxiety, mistrust, and hyper-awareness. Families were often targeted indirectly, with threats or punishment extended to children or partners as a method of reinforcing obedience. The trauma was invisible but cumulative, affecting mental and emotional health for a lifetime. Even after emancipation, survivors remembered these subtle abuses, recounting the quiet cruelty of mistresses whose hands never touched the fields, but whose influence shaped every aspect of their existence. The silent strategies of control created a climate where enslaved individuals learned to hide, to deceive, to anticipate, and to endure, often sacrificing personal dignity and emotional well-being for safety. Generations experienced the psychological imprint of this authority, carrying lessons of fear, compliance, and survival into freedom, illustrating that cruelty did not always need to be physical to be devastatingly effective. Historians and descendants have uncovered these hidden histories through diaries, letters, legal records, and oral testimonies. These documents reveal the extent of household surveillance, the orchestration of punishments, and the ways mistresses shaped domestic life and social hierarchies. The evidence demonstrates that the control exercised by mistresses was not incidental or passive but deliberate and strategic, reinforcing societal norms of race, gender, and class while maintaining personal authority. They influenced sales, separations, labor allocation, and even emotional well-being, effectively managing the lives of those enslaved with a precision that was both terrifying and efficient. The accounts of survivors, often fragmentary but powerful, describe a world in which the mistress's presence was felt constantly, shaping behavior and creating a pervasive climate of fear. This history challenges romanticized images of Southern plantation women, revealing a reality where elegance and cruelty coexisted, where social grace masked the mechanics of oppression, and where silence became one of the most potent instruments of control. The plantation house, once considered a place of domestic order and refinement, emerges as a landscape of subtle tyranny, a place where power operated invisibly but with devastating effect. Understanding the role of the white mistress expands the historical narrative of slavery, showing that domination was not solely a matter of brute force or legal authority but also of psychological and social control. Her influence was embedded in every interaction, every expectation, every decision, shaping the daily lives and inner experiences of enslaved people. Her silent power demonstrates how oppression can operate in ways that are hidden, pervasive, and deeply personal. These stories, long ignored or minimized, reveal the complexity of power within slavery and highlight the resilience of those who survived it. The past cannot be fully understood without acknowledging the women whose authority, subtle yet unyielding, left scars invisible to the naked eye but indelibly etched into the memory, identity, and history of generations. The quiet cruelty of the mistress reminds us that the machinery of oppression extends beyond the obvious, reaching into the hearts, minds, and everyday realities of those subjected to it. History remembers her elegance, but the enslaved remember the silence that shaped, constrained, and often broke their spirits, leaving a legacy of trauma that echoes long after the plantation doors have closed.